Welcome everyone to the Friday news. We've had news Tuesday through Thursday this week. Next week it'll be Monday through Friday. It's important to have news every day. Anyway, we got a couple of great stories for you guys. Let's go ahead and bring up our.
Oh, yeah, we'll start with this first story. Gary Gensler. You all know who Gary Gensler is? For those that don't know, Gary Gensler is the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission here in the United States of America. And the Securities and Exchange Commission is supposed to prevent all of the white-collar Wall Street criminals from manipulating the stock market and stealing everybody's money through that kind of manipulation. And I shared this with you, Shane, the other day. This has been a story that's probably now a year old as far as how much more focus the general public has on it, understanding it. So Gary Gensler went on an interview. I believe it was with, let's see here. Of course, the screen is now asking me to subscribe to. Okay, here we go. So he did an interview with Bloomberg in which Gary Gensler, the chairman of the SEC, who is supposed to supervise investigations, observing market flows, 90 to 95% of retail orders don't go through the lit exchange. Now, what does that mean? When you look at your stocks on the Apple Stock app and you see the volume and you see the current value of the stock, that's what we call a lit exchange. That means everybody is seeing what's being reported on Wall Street as far as the value of the stock and as far as how much it's been selling and moving during the day. However, for the past year, retail traders who have focused on how the stock market works are trying to understand why, when there's so much volume, the price is not actually going up. It's trading sideways, why this happens. There is a tool used by Wall Street called the dark pools. Okay, now it's not, even though it sounds sinister, it was not named the dark pools to sound sinister. Dark means the public does not see it, like the lit exchange that we watch every day. So when Gensler says that 90 to 95% of everyday trading, all the money that retail traders are investing in the stock market, are not showing up on the lit exchange, what we're watching every day, that means that 90 to 95% of the trades are going to the dark pools. And the dark pools are managed by the hedge funds and the market makers who will routinely route the order from the stockbroker into the dark pool, let it sit for a week, 2 weeks, go through other entities to clear. Meanwhile, if that's sitting in a dark pool, not a lit exchange, that means that the real price and value of the stock that we're seeing every day is not real. What does that do? That means that if you've put a lot of money into a stock and you're expecting it to go up and it doesn't, you panic and you sell. Why are the hedge funds doing this? They have all shorted many, many companies. They have borrowed stocks against companies to drop the price down so that when they have to return those shares, they get to keep the money that they borrowed the share at, not what they're returning the share at based on the value that they're dropping the price to. So when Gary Gensler says 90 to 95% of retail orders are not going through a lit exchange, that means the price is being manipulated every goddamn day. And we know this because last year around this time, one of the trading apps, Robinhood, that appeals to retail investors, at the point that suddenly the big squeeze with GameStop was happening, they shut off the buy button on their app, which meant that if you saw the price of GameStop going up and you wanted to get in, they weren't going to allow you to buy. They were only allowing you to sell your shares to drop the price, because this was the point where GameStop was suddenly going up in price against what hedge funds wanted. It was the big short squeeze. And when Robinhood took away the buy button, and in subsequent investigations, said they didn't do anything wrong, and the investigators apparently are not acknowledging that they did something wrong. When one of the biggest hedge fund managers, Ken Griffin, out of Citadel in Chicago, lied before Congress and said that there was no collusion with Robinhood, when clearly there was communication back and forth. Robinhood, Citadel has a business relationship with Robinhood. It's a rigged market.
This is what I call cheating the general public.
Yes,
and
it's a casino. It shows what a casino is. So going back to the Bloomberg interview that Gary Gensler did, the SEC commissioner says these orders are rerouted to dark pools rather than the New York Stock Exchange, which we are watching every day. Okay. Now, in this article that comes to us from franknez.com that was reporting on the Bloomberg article, it's a year after the meme stock frenzy that the community receives this official news. Now, Gary Gensler, as the chairman of the SEC, has the power to shut down the dark pools for 30 days to investigate what kind of illegal market manipulation is going on. We're a year out from Robinhood shutting off the buy button. He's acknowledging that 90 to 95% of retail orders are going through dark pools. For a year, this is why GameStop and AMC, which the majority of retail investors have bought into, to basically wait for the short squeeze to happen when hedge funds are either margin called or ordered to return the shares that they borrowed at whatever the new price is, which is higher, which would essentially liquidate and fuck the hedge funds as they deserve to be fucked. Because I'm sorry, can I say fuck on the Daily Show here?
Yeah, you can.
All right, I'll watch my language. To screw the hedge funds and hold them accountable in ways that they've never been held accountable before. Citadel, Melvin, they should be liquidated. These hedge funds are routinely trying to bankrupt companies, drive the stock down so that when they have to return the stocks that they borrowed at, it's a much lower level than the level they borrowed it at, which they keep that money. So, with it being a year after the meme stock frenzy that the community receives this official news, the meme stock community has been labeled as a conspiracy theorist, but have proven to be correct time and time again. Will the synthetics finally be uncovered? And how soon will AMC and GameStop finally squeeze? This is a big revelation, and that Gensler finally came out and acknowledged it. I mean, I guess I got to give him some credit for that, but when are you going to do something about it? This has not been a secret. Retail investors have been talking about this for the past year and been labeled conspiracy theorists and dumb money, and just sell your shares. You're never going to make your money off of GameStop or AMC, when retail investors have got nothing to lose from holding because these hedge funds have not yet covered their short positions, which will then drive the price of the stock up. And right now, I believe that retail investors comprise probably 70 to 80% of the owners of AMC stock. There are synthetics. There are phony shares that the hedge funds have created to keep kicking the can down the road until they have to return their borrowed shares or pay the current rate at the price that it's inflated to. So I found this very, very interesting that Gensler finally acknowledged this, but what's going to happen now? It's no longer a conspiracy.
I don't think he's going to do anything. We've seen how these public officials act. He may do a show or he may do an investigation, and a couple of people may be thrown under the bus. But I guarantee you, we have a guest host today.
Yeah, Oreo's jumping in.
I guarantee you. Yeah. What I guarantee
he just showed his ass to show what he felt about
it. I guarantee you, no one who should get in trouble for this is going to get in trouble for this. And if anyone does get in trouble for this, they're going to throw lawyers under the bus or some low-ranking officials. I mean, you see what happens every time this goes on. Happens is either they do an investigation or they do one, and someone who shouldn't get in trouble does get in trouble.
There was a class action brought in Florida by retail investors against Citadel and Robinhood. The judge in the case, I believe that she was married to somebody who represented Citadel or one of the defendants. So naturally, she tossed the claim out of court, the class action out of court, in favor of the hedge funds. Now, do you think that they would? Don't you think that a judge who has a relationship with someone that does business with the defense would recuse themselves because clearly there's a conflict of interest, or there would be a conflict of interest suspected once you see what that relationship was? But yeah, Shane, I think you're right. But now that the cat's out of the bag, the entire world economy has now basically, it's been confirmed to the entire world economy. You do business in the U.S. markets, it's a rigged game. Don't expect you're going to get an honest shake. This logically should instill fear in the worldwide economy to even invest in U.S. markets when they understand that the market is rigged on behalf of the hedge funds and the 1% that always walk away from this and continually tank our economy while nobody's perp walked, or we saw in the 2008 crash. I think there was like one hedge fund manager or something that faced any kinds of charges, and it was a reset. Hedge funds got bailed out. Nobody really got punished, and basically it emboldens them to do this shit, to start routing all of the retailers to dark pools to basically protect themselves from finally having to return their short positions, which, as I understand it, they're paying a shitload of interest on additionally.
Yes, definitely. Yes, Lana. More free market fantasy BS. Yep.
Yeah, free market. Yeah, free market.
Yeah. But no, and this also reminds me, and I'm going to give a plug to Ron Placone here, because he's got a really interesting movie coming out about how the U.S. stock market kind of works and a story there. Everybody should check out that movie.
Yeah, I like Ron. Excuse me. You got something to say? Add to the story here? All right, park your butt. Sit there.
Let's see. We have another story here. Jeff Zucker has resigned from CNN. I'm going to share my screen here. There's a couple of reasons. One being the ties to Andrew Cuomo. CNN rose as Jeff Zucker. Zucker, for those who don't know, was the president of CNN. Let's see. So this is Jeff Zucker for all of you to see. The ongoing investigation, which exposed an affair that led to Zucker's abrupt resignation yesterday. This wasn't yesterday, but his unearthed possible improprieties in Cuomo's tenure as governor, sources tell Rolling Stone. There's a couple of reasons. I believe
Shane, I don't think you've got a very strong connection. You're kind of breaking up on that end.
They want to charge us for their news and put it behind it.
Not sure what's happening on Shane's end, but we've got a frozen screen and we had audio issues. I'm going to see if I can pull up the article and kind of fill people in while we're waiting for Shane to hopefully correct the technical difficulties on that.
Am I back?
Are we still live?
Am I back?
You're back.
Yeah. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
So I'm not able to share the article because it's forcing me to pay for it.
Let me see if I can bring it up on my Chrome and share it in my browser. But why don't you go ahead and just share some of the details while I try to bring the screen up?
Sure. So, in very basic terms, there was an affair that had happened, which makes Jeff Zucker look really bad. There's also seems to be some ties to Andrew Cuomo during his tenure as governor. This just shows how CNN is not a news agency.
Mm-mm.
It's a bunch of clowns who are doing a show.
Make their own rules. Hold everyone to a different set of standards.
Right. And we have the new president of MSNBC. I can't remember her name. about 2 months ago or 3 months ago. You know what she said when she got in there?
Mm.
We want to do more hard news. We want to be like CNN.
Good luck with that.
So we have a horrible news agency trying to emulate a worse news agency.
Yeah.
This is what happened.
I find the interesting thing with CNN, which will tie into our coverage of what's happening with Spotify and Joe Rogan. I'm still trying to bring the article up here, Shane. Hang on a second. I do have it on my screen if you want to share it from that end. Hopefully it'll show. There you go. Yeah. So, CNN controls the news. Fox controls the news. They control the flow of news that we see. They rely on people like us who are only subscribed to cable to assume that the news that's coming through our TV screens is official and it's real and it's legitimate and it's believable, and it's not. As it relates to this, technical issues. Yeah, as it relates to this article, it clearly shows that Zucker was allowing things to happen at CNN with Chris Cuomo because he's the brother of Andrew Cuomo, which means that they were basically covering the scandal in New York City with Andrew Cuomo. They were whitewashing a lot of it. Whenever Chris Cuomo would be on to interview his brother Andrew, the governor, and toss some softballs and share the family stories, that's not news. That's helping direct a narrative that people would like Andrew Cuomo and believe that he's doing a good job when he was dropping the ball and allowing residents in senior homes to die, or mismanaging the allotment, the work behind the scenes where he's having his staff write a book that he gets paid for, covering up and intimidating and threatening the women who have since filed sexual harassment allegations against him. Now, what does CNN do? They decide to assign the governor's brother to cover the governor instead of actually put a hard focus on what should have been reported. And this all happened under Zucker's. This all happened under Zucker's watch.
CNN only has 45 other hosts that could have done that coverage.
Right.
They were short-staffed, and they really did.
And this is the guy here who I guess he's too busy, hiding his affair behind the scenes to realize, maybe I ought to assign another reporter to all these, all the reports all the coverage that Chris Cuomo is getting. Right. But let's transition this into the Joe Rogan Spotify story that we've been following all week long. As we know, not too long ago, CNN, actually all of mainstream news, whether it's CNN or MSNBC, they all have an agenda to shut down or identify alternative sources of information as misinformation. Now, Joe Rogan's not a journalist. Joe Rogan's a meathead MMA wrestler who enjoys having conversations with the guests on his show, and he's acknowledged it. He doesn't have the journalistic credentials that some people at CNN are supposed to have when they report the news. Okay. So CNN that, establishes itself as this pillar of journalism, and pointing the finger at people like Joe Rogan. He's dangerous. He's spreading misinformation. He needs to be deplatformed. We need to protest and protest Spotify, take business away from them. When Joe Rogan had COVID several months ago, he went on his social media and said, "Hey guys, I got COVID. I'm treating it with blah, 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 blah." Now, I'm not going to tell people how they should treat the virus if they get it. You should talk to your doctors. But the video that Rogan posted was seized by CNN, color graded to make it look. Color grading means you take the video of me right now that you're seeing, and you put it in an editing program, and you apply filters to make me look yellow and gaunt, to make it look like I'm on death's door. That's what they did with the video of Joe Rogan when they reported on CNN that he had COVID. Unfortunately, I don't have the video up here, but you guys can easily find it on YouTube. So CNN intentionally manipulated a video of Joe Rogan editorially to make him look sicker than he was, while also driving the narrative that Joe Rogan was taking ivermectin horse paste. he was taking a horse dewormer. That Men's Warehouse mannequin, Don Lemon on CNN, who's an empty suit, continually doubled down on claiming that Joe Rogan was taking ivermectin, the horse dewormer. Ivermectin has been used to treat a variety of human illnesses. There are veterinary dosages. There are human dosages. For CNN to claim that Joe Rogan was taking a veterinary medication would be me like telling Don Lemon that, hey, dude, why are you eating horse food if he's eating oatmeal in the morning, right? There's a difference between oats and oatmeal. There's a difference between human dosage ivermectin and veterinary grade ivermectin. So Rogan was not taking horse paste. And I don't know why he hasn't sued CNN yet, but CNN claims they're not spreading misinformation. Rogan is spreading information by having people on his show, doctors, talking about alternative treatments to COVID. Because this vaccine that they told us was going to end the pandemic, is a miracle drug. I'm vaccinated and I'm not anti-vax. Okay, you can be critical of the narrative that the mainstream media and our leaders are pushing right now. You can be critical of it, and that doesn't mean you're anti-vax. So I just want to establish that right now. I'm vaccinated, and I'm glad I'm vaccinated because I think it boosted my immunity to prevent me, if I were to be exposed to COVID, from getting sick. But these vaccines do not completely inoculate you from the disease, and you can still pass the disease with the vaccination. Now, I'm glad it gives me a level of protection, which is why I didn't balk at taking the vaccine. But with the government and all of these mainstream media outlets supporting the narrative of a vaccine mandate, you must get the vaccine. That's the only way out of this. No, it's not, because I can get the vaccine, I can still spread it. I can get the vaccine, I can still get sick. Why are you mandating people get something that doesn't really fit the definition of what a vaccine is? Because as we've seen, there have been a lot of people who have suffered side effects from the vaccine. Not everybody. Everybody's biology is different. But Jimmy Dore. And what was some of the treatment that Jimmy Dore got from his physician, as Joe Rogan did to – now, I don't think Jimmy got COVID. He got the vaccines, but he got sick afterwards. Ivermectin was one of the protocols that Jimmy Dore's doctors prescribed for him that apparently helped with the side effects. Joe Rogan, ivermectin was part of the treatment his doctors applied after he got COVID to help manage and bring him back to health, along with I forgot what the name of the other treatments are. But Joe Rogan essentially got like the super cocktail that Trump got when he was on death's door, because he was running around without a mask and thought he was Superman. So CNN, however, the pinnacle of information, wants to deplatform Rogan. They want to continue to tell people, you got to boycott Spotify because we're the information outlet. No, you're not. How are you really managing proper information? How are we supposed to believe anything CNN says anywhere when it's clear that they manipulated the narrative with Rogan, when Zucker here manipulated the narrative by allowing Chris Cuomo to cover his brother? It's funny right now, as we just saw Whoopi Goldberg suspended for 2 weeks for tremendously stupid and insensitive comments about the Holocaust. Now, I don't think that Whoopi should have been suspended for 2 weeks, right? Any more than I think Joe Rogan his show should be pulled from Spotify. We live in a society where people should be allowed their free speech, and if someone wants to hang themselves during their free speech, let them. I don't think that supports the idea of allowing hate speech or nonsense like Alex Jones spouted when he was claiming that Sandy Hook was a false flag operation. When someone's going to yell fire in a theater, you got to hold that person accountable. But for everybody to be calling for censorship and deplatforming against people that don't agree or share the same narrative or information that they do is chilling. I never imagined that I would see leftists or Democrats, as a leftist myself, calling for this outright censorship and deplatforming of people. And now you've got Joe Biden's administration that apparently said today they want to hold Spotify accountable because of all the misinformation coming out from there. Going back to The View really quickly, these know-nothing, I think Howard Stern coined this phrase, and I just think it's funny, these know-nothing yentas on The View constantly complaining about, others that don't share their worldviews, and that person should be shut down, that person should be censored. But Whoopi Goldberg got suspended for 2 weeks for insensitive comments, and they're all up in arms about it. Shouldn't happen to her. And it's interesting too. The View also claimed that they didn't feel that Joe Rogan should be censored, and I don't know. I was trying to figure out, did they say that before or after Whoopi got suspended to support their narrative of protecting Whoopi? Of course, it wouldn't be consistent if they thought it was wrong for Whoopi to get suspended, but that they would advocate for Rogan's program to get deplatformed. So I was trying to find the timing on that. I didn't see it, but it's fascinating how the left, much of the official left, has devolved into wanting to shut people down. CNN is in support of this campaign of going after people like Joe Rogan. A lot of other broadcasters on mainstream networks like The View in the past have routinely called for deplatforming and censorship. It's just fascinating, Shane, to see from my perspective how in a country of free speech, this is happening. And we would imagine, and because it has happened in the past. In the past, I've always thought it was more the conservative, the right side that wanted to shut people down and censor people, and because of a differing opinion. To see the left embracing that right now, it astounds me and astonishes me.
Well, I remember having a conversation with someone about censorship. It was maybe 3 years ago. They said, I want Ben Shapiro to be censored. And I think they were a Kyle Kalinske viewer. I said, okay, you can do that, but you like Kyle Kalinske, right? He's like, yeah.
Right.
Once they censor Ben Shapiro, they're going to come for your friend Kyle. And he's like, oh, no, they wouldn't do that.
Really?
Because I like what Kyle is saying, and I don't like what Ben's saying.
Yeah, look, if you don't like Joe Rogan, don't watch him. Don't watch him. Mm-hmm. Or if you don't like The View, don't watch it. You don't like CNN, don't watch it. But the influence that the more major mainstream news powers have to drive the narrative to shut people down is what's at play here, especially on YouTube. YouTube used to be YouTube. You broadcast as the media dynamic has changed and more people are flocking to YouTube to listen to alternative opinions. Mainstream news didn't understand that. They've started working with YouTube to dominate YouTube, where it's more corporate news on YouTube, and literally directing and working with YouTube to marginalize hosts on YouTube of independent shows that aren't official sources, to basically shut down or censor them. We've dealt with this at Hard Lens Media. We see this happening with Jimmy Dore. We see it happening with all the independent. So yeah, I'm no fan of Ben Shapiro. I think he's a tool, but let him keep talking and showing what a tool he is, so people can laugh at him. Because yeah, you decide to censor him. What have we seen happening? The dominoes are falling now against anybody that wants to censor anybody now, and that's not what free speech in America is about.
Once you censor Ben Shapiro, then it opens the door to censor Jimmy Dore. And then once you censor Jimmy Dore, then it opens the door to censor Dave Rubin. And then you're censoring Kyle Kalinske. And then you're censoring this one. And then you're censoring. And then suddenly nobody's allowed to say anything. Because once you open the door for censorship, you're going to censor everyone. Because everyone who's outside, even slightly, of the mainstream narrative is going to become censored.
And look at all of these celebrities from previous eras that rightfully at the time led protests against horrible inequities, horrible policies of the U.S. government. Neil Young, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Joni Mitchell, they are all calling for Spotify to cancel Joe Rogan. Now, it's funny to me that these ancient musicians, most of whom I thought were dead, and I'm not saying that flippantly, it's like, oh wow, they're still alive, to come out and start demanding that Spotify pull Rogan down, or else Spotify cannot share their music. It's like, fine, take your ball and run away. You have no right to come on here and start dictating terms to Spotify. You don't like Rogan, again, don't listen to him.
all these musicians back in the day, before they made money like they have now, or when, you know, they were activists, were advocating for these activist policies. But now you see all these musicians hanging out with the politicians, and now you see that they're not the same people who they were in the 60s and 70s and 80s
Right.
and 90s and all of that. They're not the same people because they've been corrupted. They're without even realizing it.
Yeah.
They don't even know. Because what was that book? I remember everyone was talking about getting a book for the holidays. The Barack Obama versus Springsteen book. And I'm like, okay. That was like the book. Everybody was like, I got the book.
Yay.
Now he's hanging out with the rockers, hanging out with Barack Obama.
Now, meanwhile, Obama's parasailing with Richard Branson of Virgin Atlantic, or whatever his company is. Flint still doesn't have clean water. Remember Barack Obama drinking the water? This isn't a stunt. This is real water. I need a glass of water here. Talk about a real sellout who also bamboozled us. Look, what's really troubling here to me is how the left has been co-opted by the official Democratic left has been co-opted by so many. What's the word I want to use? I want to use the right. I was leaning towards fascist
neoliberals
policies. Yeah, the neoliberals embracing fascist ideologies and shutting down free speech that doesn't fit their narrative that they control.
And calling themselves progressive while they do it.
Yeah, co-opting. Look, in the past, I used to identify myself as a liberal until liberal became the N-word, right? And that the right was able to constantly throw around, oh, they're liberal, as if liberal was a bad thing. But liberal got turned into a bad word because the right knew how to twist it to make it a toxic word and mean that Democrats just wanted to give the store away and not be hard on crime, blah, 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 blah. So how are we going to identify ourselves politically? Progressive, because that's kind of how Bernie Sanders emerged in the early years of his relevancy and exposure to the rest of the American public. The Progressive Party was also the party of Teddy Roosevelt. Way back when Teddy Roosevelt was alive, one of our I think, great presidents. He was a Republican who broke off from the Republican Party and created the Progressive Party. They had policies and ideals that supported working class families, that supported the average American. So progressive was a good word. And that's the word we used to describe ourselves until suddenly, who's going to use that branding? The Squad, Nancy Pelosi. Well, that's the big buzzword now. So now, the Democrats are progressives, and they've taken that word away from us. That label or branding away from us to identify we're different from the liberals or the neoliberals that the Democratic Party has mutated into.
I don't understand the difference. I remember having a conversation with a mainstream Democrat not too long ago, and I said, well, I'm on the left. Well, the Democratic Party is the left. What do you mean you're on the left? If you're on the left, you'd be in the Democratic Party.
The Democratic Party right now is just slightly right of center. The Republican Party is far right of center. There is no real official strong left representing us in with any amount of power in American politics today. Many people would argue that Bernie Sanders was center and maybe just a little left of center. I think he's a little farther left of center. But there are people in Europe that look at Bernie Sanders and they're like, he's really not that left leaning as the left is in Europe and advocating for people.
Has shifted so far to the right. I just want to give a really interesting example of this. So I'm sure you're familiar, Jerry, with the Democratic Leadership Council. Spawned Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
So imagine a Democratic Party where someone who identifies as Green Party now is the far left of the party. Someone who identifies with Bernie Sanders would be the center of the party. And someone who identifies with an Elizabeth Warren would be the right of the party. That's how left the Democratic Party was. And then the Democratic Leadership Council came in, and they decided in order for this party is too lefty. In order for this party to survive, we need to move to the right.
But can I also just parse that with survive means get more donor money, right?
Yes.
And where's that donor money going to come from? All the liberals living, all middle class or upper class liberals living in the suburbs who are living in their bubbles, living in their echo chambers that don't see what's happening on the south and west sides of Chicago in this hyper segregated city where, that they wouldn't step foot in while they virtue signal about how things need to be changed without actually doing it. So the Democratic Party decided, well, we need to really figure out how to embrace that demographic of voters because, a lot of suburban Democrats think they're liberal, but they're not. They're probably moderate to, I would identify them as like moderate, fiscally conservative, sane Republicans. And that's what Nancy Pelosi is. Nancy Pelosi is a Republican. She's Ronald Reagan in a wig. She's
Yes.
Ronald Reagan in a wig. She ran as a Democrat so she could get in there while taking all the money from the same interests that the Republicans take money from. Look, the Republicans are just honest about stabbing you in the face. The Democrats say, we'll help you. We're friendly. We support you. And they stab you in the back later. I almost have more respect for the Republicans, but they're just two sides of the same coin.
They are. Well, at least the Republicans will tell you they're not going to help you.
Right. You know who to avoid. But then the Democrats are wasting your time. It's like, who do I got to sift through here to find a politician that really is going to deliver what they claim they are on the progressive platform that they state they're running off of? We're dealing with this here in Chicago with our mayor, Lori Lightfoot. She's a woman of color and a lesbian. I voted for her not for those reasons. I voted for her because she identified herself as a progressive and a reformer. I thought it was kind of nice that she was a lesbian and a black woman. I'm like, that's great. There are going to be some factions that are represented and feel empowered because she has that identity. But the identity politics that she ran on, as we also saw Pete Buttigieg ran on, don't amount to bullshit because that's what they lean on then when they suddenly pull the rug out from under us and say, well, I said I was a progressive, but I'm not actually going to legislate as a progressive. And if you criticize me now, I'm going to call you homophobic or racist or misogynistic because of my identity. That's the insidious, sinister side to identity politics, as we're seeing everywhere. You know what? Lori Lightfoot or Pete Buttigieg, just as two examples, are not horrible people because of their identity as gay Americans. They're just horrible people. There are horrible gay people in this world as much as there are horrible straight people in this world.
Exactly.
So the proliferation of identity politics into this equation also in the Democratic Party, they're leaning on the identity politics to draw more voters instead of the policies of progressivism, if that's a word, that we're led to believe that they represent. I don't know how the F they're going to survive these midterms, man, because it's not going to be so much about people voting against them as much as people not coming out to vote is what's going to happen.
I'm going to tell you, Nancy Pelosi is not going to have to worry about keeping her promise to step down from the speaker. She'll be the minority leader in the fall.
Yeah. We can only hope.
So let's go ahead with our last story. I'm going to try to bring it up. My connection seems to be a little bit more stable.
It's all right. Let's say give some shout outs to the live chat. Holly Horn. Hey, Holly, nice to see you again. I think that, who else was here earlier that I saw that I recognize? War Deer. Hey, War Deer. Good to see you. Yeah, I am the potty mouth. Lana Dell hates the clock. Hey, I always love engaging with our live chatters when I do Chicago Corner. I always try to bring them into the conversation and see what they have to share regarding what we're talking about. Terrence Kudney for Medicare for All. There's one good facet to this story. It reminds us of the terribleness of the Cuomo family and the complicity of mainstream media in it. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Joe Rogan can speak, but you don't have to watch. Same with CNN. That comes from Holly Horn. Terrence Kudney for Medicare for All. You got to call up their past statements and quote them back to themselves, force them to reckon with it. Yeah, and own it. So you guys are slammed with a storm right now out on the East Coast?
Well, I don't have a storm here. It's raining very badly.
Oh, Jimmy mentioned in the chat the East Coast is slammed with winter weather. I'm surprised you even have power, Shane, but
it's not bad where I am. Ohio's pretty bad. I think that New Jersey is pretty bad. New York, where I am, is actually not as bad. We have snow. and it's a little bit over 40 degrees out, and it won't stop raining. But the connection is bad for some reason.
I see. Well, that could be wind buffeting power lines and interrupting telemetry from Wi-Fi signals and stuff, or Wi-Fi towers.
Here's an interesting thing from Terrence. You got to call up their past statements and quote them back to themselves, force them to reckon with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go into this last and final story. So, New York Times managers are waging anti-union campaigns during the tech election. Now, how do we know this? We know this because there was a memo. 600 tech workers at the New York Times newly leaked documents reveal that managers of the publication are engaging in union-busting practices in hopes of quashing the effort. In leaked Slack messages, that's what it was, leaflets, and at least one memo, company leadership discouraged workers within the New York Times company tech guild, known as XFUN, from voting for their union representation ballots for the election. This, which started on January 24th, and are due back on February 28th. So their stuff is due in a little while.
They sent a memo entitled "Why a Tech Union Isn't Right for Us." In short, we don't believe unionizing in X Fund is the right move, but that's not because I'm anti-union. Colpit Levian wrote, echoing language from other companies that also claim to be pro-union while engaging in anti-union practices. Excuse me.
Their recent negotiation. So they don't like the fact that it might take 2 years to reach it to negotiate, because it took them 2 years to reach an agreement with the News Guild. They just don't want to treat their workers properly. They want their tech workers to work for slave wages.
Doesn't everybody these days?
Clearly, it's disgusting. And
or own their volunteers. Shane, I hear that's the industry scandal you're involved in. You want to own your volunteers and not allow them to work elsewhere.
Yeah. Anyway, but
that's a funny side note story. But I mean, I'm being facetious here, but it just reminded me of that.
Yes. So the New York Times, and it's been leaked, it's proven they're trying to union bust, and they were trying to do it quietly.
Yeah.
They were hoping that nobody would realize what they were doing. But these leaflets have been leaked, these Slack messages, these memos, and now everybody knows what they're doing. And they can't hide it anymore. People realize they're trying to stop the unionization of their tech guild.
So this is clearly a more local story to New York, where KRTD is based. I read the article. I'm not sure of what the rest of the fallout is as far as the response to this story by others in New York, pro-union, or just, average New York residents. Do you have any perspective on that?
So New York is funny. So it looks like we're a very Democrat run state. So people think that we're very progressive here, but we're really not. I mean, we churned out governors like Cuomo, first of all.
Yeah.
So in essence, a lot of the businesses live in New York, like this one, have really corrupt leadership. They have extremely disgusting practices, like the CEO of the New York Times here, or whoever is responsible for these things. They don't like unions in New York, these businesses. They only allow them when they're forced to do it. And then when businesses do unions, then they brag about how progressive they are, even though they were fighting it every step of the way. So they just don't want a union, because they just had to unionize another part. Because of the way the New York Times is structured, each piece of it, they have different guilds. So they had to the tech workers now want to unionize. So they've already had a couple of pieces of the New York Times have been unionized, and they didn't like how they had to raise wages, how they had to improve their health care, how they had to do a number of other things. And they're hoping they can stop this faction from unionizing. That's what it looks like is happening here.
Don't you know this is why people just want to stay home and get fat off of unemployment, because they're lazy? No, it's because they realize that during their downtime when they were getting government benefits that they weren't being paid properly for their labor and their time to begin with. And that's what unions are for. They're to protect. Look, I understand that there's corruption in unions also, but this anti-union sentiment that has been amplified in this country, I would say since Ronald Reagan's ascension, and also carried through the Clinton years as well. You can't just get rid of unions because there's some corruption. Reform them. They serve a very, very important role in protecting American workers and making sure that they're getting a fair deal and the proper representation. No company's gonna. The whole identity of companies is to exploit workers as much as they can and not pay them anything. So this is really disappointing to hear that this is coming from the New York Times.
Well, the New York Times
is a liberal city and a liberal newspaper. Or is it a liberal newspaper? I've always thought that they're left leaning from my perception. Are they more right or conservative?
So the New York Times, and I'm going to be very honest here, is a newspaper that the elites read, whether it's the elite liberals or the elite conservatives. They do the New York Times crossword puzzle. Is the big thing.
Okay.
It's for the elites.
We're talking about the suburban here in Chicago we'd call them the suburban liberals, or in California the limousine liberals, the ones who virtue signal and talk a lot but want to see people shut down, and if you don't agree with their brand of liberalism, then you must be a Republican, a fascist, a Nazi, or whatever other buzzword they're going to use to identify you.
Not a lot of the working class in New York still read newspapers. The ones who do usually buy the local papers, which are not necessarily slanted either way and are much better, but some of those are even starting to get bought out by some of the bigger businesses. But no, but you're right. That's the suburban. Yeah. The rich and upper middle class read the New York Times of both parties for the most part, and they really like it. Usually people who went to higher end business schools or Ivy League schools or just really good colleges and who have a lot of money, that's their base. I wouldn't necessarily call them left or right. I've seen they could go either way depending on the issue.
Interesting. Our two papers here in Chicago. One paper that had really kind of fallen into the dumps, the Chicago Sun-Times, has now, I think, been acquired by WBEZ or the editorial staff at We're hoping for better things with the Sun-Times now that we've got, I think, more responsible journalists taking over that paper. But the Chicago Tribune was like the beacon of news in Chicago, and that's been bought out by hedge funds that are slowly just like dismantling it, selling off different divisions and stuff. And we really wonder if it's going to be a good source of news anymore, given the staff cuts and the writers and the mainstay writers that people in Chicago have trusted for so long that they're gutting. I don't know. Alternative news. That's the way, everybody. Here, there, Dorr, Kalinsky, Breaking Points, Ron Placone.
Yeah.
You can find the best news here without worrying about it being agenda-driven.
Mm-hmm. And also for written news, check out the KRTD Media blog. We actually have writers who will eventually be writing every day, but, it's just started up, so it's a little bit slower. Anyway, so
Well, Shane, you guys are doing good. I mean, I'm like really excited to watch KRTD's progress as I am watching Heartlands Media here in Chicago. I really was lucky to be able to join the Heartlands Media Network here in Chicago, Kit Cabello, Daniel Lepker, and then by virtue of my association with them, discover you, and kind of become part of this very, very important information ecosystem on YouTube with independent news coverage. Oh, I see Jimmy's in the chat too. Hey, Jimmy, congratulations on your promotion here at KRTD Media, guiding the ship. Good stuff.
Yep. While we're still allowed on YouTube.
Yeah, right. We'll see how long that lasts. Have you and Jimmy and the rest of the staff there started considering lifeboat options if YouTube starts to come down hard on what you guys are doing on YouTube and tries to suppress your voices?
Yes, we're looking to create an archive of everything we've ever done. That way, if we have to cross platforms, we can just re-upload everything. It'll be tedious. But, Rockfin, Odyssey, some of these other ones, like even Facebook is becoming a little bit restrictive with their streaming.
I encountered that on my Chicago Corner show 3 weeks ago. We were talking about something, and my co-host Ed, who's a big deep dish pizza enthusiast, decided to, in the background, run some B-roll of pizza preparation, completely innocent. Well, suddenly they interrupted our broadcast and we were off the air, and it wasn't even YouTube. It was because we were also streaming on Facebook. We were sending our YouTube StreamYard link to Facebook, that there was a copyright claim for that pizza prep video from Facebook, because I found out later Facebook said your stream was interrupted. So what happened was the stream that was going to Facebook got bounced to YouTube, and we got shut down. So like even Facebook has its tentacles over what YouTube is doing if you're going to stream from YouTube to Facebook using the StreamYard platform to reach as many viewers as you can.
Twitter has been the nicest to us. We just had an amazing video on Twitter. Lisa, who works here also, she interviewed the Democratic Progressive Caucus chair over in California right after the author of the California Universal Healthcare Bill pulled his bill from the floor because he didn't want his colleagues to go on record or something. So he pulled his own bill to get them universal health care so his colleagues wouldn't have to vote no. So we had the Progressive Caucus chair on, and it was retweeted like crazy. Twitter's been very nice to us. It got retweeted by Susan Sarandon.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the Democratic Caucus chair, the video, let me just pull it up. Where is it at now? It is at 43,000.1K views at this point. Our most viewed thing ever, pretty much. But I just want to direct everybody to that because the Democratic Caucus chair for the Progressive Caucus said that the Democratic Party is a money laundering scheme on air in the recording we made of him.
Would we disagree?
No.
I mean, they did admit in open court that they have the right as a corporation to rig their own primaries and select their own candidates, despite the kabuki theater out in public of, oh, it's a primary, come vote. Oh, Bernie Sanders won the first 3 primaries, which means that he would probably go on to grab the nomination. No. Let's have Obama come in and start splintering these 2 other candidates to support Biden, so we can basically, derail Sanders' momentum. This is rigging, whether it was legal or not. It was rigged.
And Beto O'Rourke coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, Beto. What an appropriate name for him, Beto the Beta.
Yes, but we got to So, but we got that. I couldn't believe a leader in the Democratic Party said that the Democratic Party is a money laundering scheme. Imagine that.
I'm not going to argue with him.
And now they'd like.
It is a money laundering scheme. You send your donations to them to then be dispersed among their candidates, and they determine, which candidates are going to get the money. and with, I'm sure, a lot of overhead fees that they're taking out for managing.
You also mentioned this, I really like, another scheme that the Democratic Party does, which is called cleaning corporate money. What happens is candidates who want to look anti-corporate will get the corporations to donate to the Democratic Party and have a deal with the Democratic Party, where the Democratic Party cleans that money and gives it to them as party money. And then they could say that they're running as anti-corporate candidates.
They are diabolical, man. Hey, I just saw in my my social media news. I'm not surprised by this, and I applaud it. Jon Stewart has just gone public, siding with Joe Rogan. I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for Jon Stewart. This overreaction to Rogan, I think, is a mistake. Kind of circling back on what we were talking about earlier in the show.
Yeah. And that's amazing. So we only have a few minutes left. Do we want to interact with the chat for the last couple minutes?
Sure. Anybody have anything they want to share? I mean, I think I kind of got up to date with some of the comments made by viewers earlier. How many people are tuned in right now? I can't see on this end.
Right now we have 6. We had 15 earlier, but
cool.
Cross-platform, but there's only 6 left because the show's winding down.
Well, look, I can say without any updated comments from the chat. Oh, I saw Jimmy. She's proud of us all. Thank you, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on to join the network here once a month. I really enjoy chatting with you and getting an alternative perspective outside of Chicago too. on news, national news. Because when I do Chicago Corner, I'm mostly hyper-focused on stuff locally here in Chicago. There are certainly national stories that kind of cross over and impact Chicago, but I really enjoy when I can participate in shows that are focused also on the national news conversation. Sometimes I'll fill in at Hardland's meeting when they need me and get a chance to talk about national stuff here with you. So thanks again for the invitation to always come back.
Of course. Thank you, Jerry. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. This is the end of the KRTD news for this week. Everyone tune in on Monday for Lisa and Sakuru to do their news for the first time because they didn't get to do this week. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Night. Bye-bye, everyone.